Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Control Port Podcast, episode 302. I'm Benjamin Yoder, here today to talk to you about video games. I actually did play some video games recently. Rare. I've been mostly working on stuff, but yeah, video games did happen. Both of the multiplayer and single player of a multiplayer game variety. So you'll be hearing about those here. We also have some news stories, very small news stories. One about IntiCreates, another one about a Dojin game. Let's talk about that. We also have a Harvest Moon thing. Not a lot to say about that, but I just want to talk a little bit about what caught my eye about it. But yeah, so those are kind of the main topics of the show. But I want to start off first and foremost just by, noting that, hey, if you heard last week, I had said last week I was looking at the Babylon's Fall video coming out in the next week or two. It did come out. I put it out on Friday, which is not a traditional day that a video comes out from me. But I don't really know, with my schedule being all kind of different now, I don't really know what the right days are to push stuff out. So I figured Friday, it's a 38-minute long video, so it's long. So it's like the weekend's probably the best time for somebody to have time to sit down and watch this, I would think. I don't know. Maybe not for sure, but yeah. So yeah, that's up, and it did pretty well. I think people liked it generally, and it performed better than a lot of my videos in the first 48 hours or whatever it is. So it's definitely cooled off though. So it's kind of down to the slow burn area again, which is pretty typical for a lot of my videos. So we'll see if it keeps going. That's kind of the big thing. Like the Nier video, the Nier voice acting or dialogue comparison video. Started off terribly, but eventually it's built up, and now it's like one of my, if not my number one video, pretty dang high up there. So it could very well get there, but we'll see. You never know. Like the Buddy Mission Bond video also started off strong, and then it kind of puttered out, and then the burn has been super slow on it. So you never really know where these things are going. But for right now, I think my feeling is that the Babylon's Fall video, Babylon Fall is probably going to be something that people are going to look into for a long time. Not in waves of people, but, just a few people here and there. And, I kind of missed the boat on when the game was shutting down. I should have had this video out 2 weeks ago, honestly, but too late. There's some other videos that came out. They're about what I expected from what I could see. I did not watch all of them, but just the general topics about them seemed kind of what I expected about hey, here's this mega failure. Here's the disaster video game. And if you've watched my Babylon's Fall video, you kind of know that I don't feel that way about that game. And while I'm not saying they're wrong for how they feel about that game, I feel like the language we use around that game is very undesirable in a lot of ways. And something that I think that we as a gaming community have failed to be good at. I think we as a whole fail many video games a year by failing to take them seriously, even if they have problems, right? That's the thing. Once a game has problems, and, if it's depending on what it is, hey, here's a Platinum Games community. They want these specific things from games. Square Enix is the publisher. There's a lot of factors. There's live service games. People are pushing back on live service games right now. And all these things add up to a game that, gets really beat down on because there are things that are kind of unfashionable at the moment, I guess, maybe I should say, or goes against the grid of what that people want from that publisher per se. So anyways, all that stuff aside, go watch that video if you're interested in hearing about that. Going forward, I think I will try to upload those premiere videos in 4K, mainly just because I noticed how much the 1080p compression issue was with that video, just how bad Babylon's Fall looked. And sometimes Chocobo GP as well, which is in that video too, looked really bad too. So I ended up kicking my resolution out as 4K. The video footage is still 1080p, but just YouTube handles compression very differently when you update it. So if you're watching that video and you have the network resources and the computer resources to watch it in 1440p, highly recommend doing that because it definitely cleared up the video footage a lot. So what's next after the Babylon's Fall video is kind of hard to say. I do have a Ko-fi post going up on, I believe it's Tuesdays when I'm planning on putting it up, but it'll be up sometime this week at the very least. And that post, I think, is going to go a little detail of what I heard back about that video. Also, just talking a little bit about what that video's position is when it comes to my channel, because my channel's been kind of refocused, and the reality is that the Babylon Fall video is this weird in between video in a lot of ways. And so it doesn't really represent, it does represent what I want to do, but it's not a full representation of what I want to do with the channel, I think. So, so there's a post that's going to go up on Tuesday if you want to read that. And then also PCFX Fan Club podcast, there's an interview episode for that going up with David Shadoff, which is the fellow that developed the kind of recent homebrew hardware for the PCFX mouse, and also the PCFX NVBMP, which is like the essentially a memory card for the PCFX. They are very expensive units to get, so the NVBMP is a replacement for it and uses flash memory, so you know it will last longer than the older BMP pack or whatever. So that's coming up. If you're listening to this podcast today, it comes out later today in the afternoon. I think it's like 5:30 PST. So, but if you listen to this podcast after the day it came out, then it is up and ready. Keep in mind, the PCFX Fan Club podcast is on another feed, so go check that out there. If you want to watch the YouTube version, that's over on their YouTube channel as well. But honestly, though, in terms of like planning for what's next, the big thing is that like I really need to plan for my Japan trip. I have not really been doing that. It is getting pretty dang close. I need to figure things out. I'm going to take a strong guess that I may not go outside the Tokyo area this time. If I was planning further ahead of time, maybe, but like I've just had trouble finding things to do in those areas. And I'm sure if I went there, like in other places, I'd find plenty to do. But just like with how things are kind of lining up, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the decisions I need within the particular time for that. And, you know, there's plenty to do around the Tokyo area. So we'll see. I might change my mind, but I think that might be the current plan. If you don't know, last time I went to Osaka and Kobe. Not Kobe, Kyoto. I was thinking about maybe going to Kobe this time because I was kind of curious about the Dragon Quest Island or whatever. But I don't know what other reason to go down to Kobe for. So I don't know. We'll see. Got it. But I do need to plan that, get that all set up and good to go. I did play some video games though. Halo Reach. Hey, it's Ben from the future. I didn't think I was gonna be so spoilerly. I was gonna go into spoilers as deep as I did in this conversation, but I did. So if you're worried about Halo Reach spoilers, skip ahead to a different section of the podcast. If you did not know, I've been very slowly playing through the Halo campaign with some friends. We played through Halo 3 ODST. And Halo 3, and Halo Reach is the third one. Yeah, so this is the third Halo campaign that we've played together. And I really liked Halo ODST. There's a lot of reasons: vibe, story. Also, I think there's some fun things about, you know, being normal humans versus Spartans and things like that in that game, and some of the limitations it places on you as the player. I think a lot of the stage designs were really fun, and things like that. But I think the story's better overall too, personally. As somebody who does not know the Halo story very well, beyond just like playing through those campaigns and like playing Halo 1 like back in 2000, and then playing Halo 2 probably back when it came out as well. So yeah. But Reach feels like a game that has a lot of missed potential in my eyes. Because if you don't know, Halo Reach is a story about how it's like an origin story of how like the original like Spartan homeland fell. If you don't know, Master Chief, the main character, is a Spartan. It's like, I don't know if it's like a race of people. It's more like maybe like genetically modified people. I don't know. Or genetically bred people maybe is another way to put it. Again, I don't know the Halo story, so don't expect me to know what I'm saying. But like there's this homeland that got blown up, and that's kind of the start of Halo 1, is that like, hey, you are one of the last Spartans remaining that got like basically ejected off this planet. So Halo Reach is about that final stand on that planet, basically. And you know, it introduces a lot of characters. There's like a squad about 5 or 6 characters. I think it's 5 characters. I think you're the 6th character. And they all have faces. They all have personalities and things like that. But I feel like there's just like not enough time to really get to know them. And the lead up on them is not great. So like it feels like it just doesn't really, nobody really sticks with you, in my opinion, that group. And then so they go through a lot of things with like characters no longer, you know, being alive. I don't know how to say that. It is important to this conversation, I feel like, and why the game's designed the way it is. But yeah, characters die. And so they kind of create drama around that and things like that. And because of that, they can't really let you play as those characters in the multiplayer. So you all are clones of the main character, which is 6, which like nobody recognizes any other characters, like your other people you're playing with. Which, I mean, that's typical for Halo, right? You do not have John Master Chief #2 in the story. It is just, he just is there for the combat and then he disappears for the cutscene kind of thing, right? But in this game in particular, it felt like the squad could have been playable characters and you might have been able to like have different specialties and skills and things like that. That would have been pretty cool, but they don't really do that. And I don't think that was their goal either, but just like you see these characters with these particular designs and these particular sets of weaponry, and it just feels like a missed opportunity that like they should have, you know, done something with them kind of thing. But, you know, it's otherwise you just play basically not Master Chief in the game and it plays like a Halo game. and so gameplay wise, I would not say there's anything interesting about Reach personally. I think it plays fine, plays like a Halo game. And I think maybe the standout thing for it is just more of just the hopelessness of just like, as you get further and further than just, I mean, like if you know the story, you know, there is no good ending to what's going to happen with everybody on this planet. So it is basically just like seeing everybody take their last stands, which I think is like an interesting thing story-wise. I was actually talking to a friend about Final Fantasy XI story recently and how that Wings of the Goddess story has some interesting things going on with it, and there's like this other area, and again, I'm not all up on the 11 lore, so forgive me if I get something wrong. This is an area called Abyssia, which is kind of like the alternate version of your world where basically every set of countries have fallen, and it's just like a bunch of like scrappy, you know, groups of people left trying to survive kind of thing. And I think that's like a fun setting to kind of contrast to the world of Final Fantasy XI on its own in a lot of ways. I don't think they really fully realize it, I will say, but it was also from a time when Final Fantasy XI had kind of a budget because of, you know, Final Fantasy 14 was coming out. And I think they're trying to move resources off of Final Fantasy 14 or Final Fantasy 11 for 14, but then Final Fantasy 14 kind of was a catastrophic failure, and they move resources back to 11. I think that is my, again, game development fan fiction. So that is my thought of like why Seekers of a Duel in it is what it is and how it happened and why it has such like a budget compared to the rest of a lot of what was happening around that time for Final Fantasy XI. So anyways, but yeah, it kind of has that feeling. We were talking about Halo. But another thing is that we kind of cranked up the difficulty, and I care if we did this for Halo 3 or ODST. I feel like we had trouble with Halo 3 ODST specifically, where it was kind of challenging and we were dying a lot. Maybe because we were doing a trio instead of 4 people at that time. But it just kind of felt way too generous on respawns. So if you don't know in Halo, you can only respawn if your party's not in combat or if they're not in danger, kind of thing. And depending on the game, I feel like these mechanics can be more or less stringent. And Reach feels like maybe the loosest that I've seen, where basically, you know, almost in any situation you can just respawn. There are limitations. There's not that there's no limitations, but it just feels like the game is very generous. And maybe, again, playing with 4 people, there's 3 people in different areas, so some might be like, you know, in deep combat, some might be outside of combat. I think my feeling is, and you know, maybe this has been addressed in later Halos, I don't know, is that maybe they should make a set number of lives, or like a set respawn per encounter, essentially, and that might make it more challenging. Maybe on like the legendary specifically, like, hey, when you're in this area, no respawns, but once you pass over this line, then people can respawn, kind of thing, right? I feel like that might make your own life more precious, because with Reach, even though we set it to legendary and it was challenging to take down enemies and stuff, most of the time you just run in and be fodder, essentially, and I feel like that should have been not the case there. So anyways, I really don't have much more to say about it, though. There's a cool ending mission. I think that's a cool mission. And, you know, I think maybe it could have been a little bit more. It feels a little, like the idea of the mission feels like it's there, but maybe the drama of the mission does not feel there. But the idea behind it is very cool. You know, again, no one survives. So how do you create a mission around that? And I think they made an interesting mission in terms of concept, and it was probably the lowest budget way to do it. But I feel like they could have maybe done something to make it feel more meaningful at that point. Like, I mean, I've already spoiled the game basically, so let's just get into it. So you are there, you're 6 or whatever, and in this final mission, you are just stuck somewhere. You basically, everybody's off this planet but you, and anyone who's on that planet with you are dying or dead. So you're just there with like the whole army of the enemy covenant or whatever. And I guess you don't really get put in the headspace of what is happening with the last guy. Like, I feel like that isolation and that feeling of overcoming the odds of that, or maybe not trying to overcome the odds, doing everything you can despite knowing this is the end, right? And like knowing that everything you're doing right now is pretty much pointless, but it's just like all you have left to do is to fight, right? And I think in the cutscene that happens at the end where they show him kind of doing this last big encounter thing, like he's like fighting like hand to hand, using every resource he has, gets stabbed and keeps fighting kind of thing. I feel like if there's a feeling of that in the gameplay, that would have been more impactful. It just feels a little weak. It feels like they just kind of dropped the map and dropped you there and just said, all right, man, good luck. And like, yeah, I mean, that kind of is it. But I feel like they needed to do more to coordinate that. Because like, we weren't even sure at the time. I was aware. I will say this. I was aware this was like the final mission. But half my party died, not realizing that was going to be the situation with the final mission, right? Yeah. And like, the enemies just there weren't a lot of the enemies and things like that too. So I don't know. Maybe they've done this better later on in the Halo series, but I feel like that series, that whole section was just like devoid of drama. That should be one of the most dramatic moments in that game. It did not feel that way to me. So I don't really know. Maybe it was like a last minute thing. Maybe the mission didn't exist in the first place. I mean, like there's the epilogue mission and then there's this mission. So like, yeah, it is kind of like after story thing. But you are kind of put into it kind of thing before you see the kind of final moments of that game. So yeah, I say it's probably to me one of the weaker games from a interesting video game standpoint. You know, I say this only recently having played Halo 3 ODST, and Reach. But I feel like it was just a missed opportunity in a lot of ways. So I don't know if that's how other people felt about it. Honestly, I cannot remember what the rumbling was around that game. I just remember at the time, I think people were kind of aware that was going to be Bungie's final Halo game. I think that's an accurate statement. I don't remember for sure, but yeah. So anyways, so that is something I did this week. Played that. I also played Soma Bringer. I'm not going to talk too much about Soma Bringer because I think at some point we'll have some kind of deeper dive into Soma Bringer, either on the podcast or in a video. But Soma Bringer is that kind of like Diablo-style, Monolith Soft action RPG on the Nintendo DS. And I've been playing it for a while, and I have not been loving it. It's fine. It is a very fine video game, but I definitely need to have like something on in the background while I play it. I've been watching, what was it called? Tomo-chan is a girl or something like that. It's like a tomboy kind of anime story. I needed something that was dubbed and simple. So I just threw that on basically while I was running dungeons in that game, or a dungeon in that game, because the dungeons in that game feel like forever. But I was playing that. The one thing that I think I did end up changing, so if you don't know, like when I originally started Soma Bringer, I picked like the Paladin style class. I forget the exact name for it, but it seemed to be like kind of like tanky melee healing, which is what I expect from our Paladin. But I'm finding as I go on that like I am having more luck with him as like a spellcaster versus like a melee tanker kind of thing. So I think what's been working out better for me is having some like heavy DPS with a lot of HP go in, And then I basically just manage the group, and I sit back and I cast holy spells and also heal the party and do that way. So that's been my experience, is that moving the paladin over to more magic build has been better. And I don't know if there's a way to reset your stats, because I have a ton of strength investment in that game, and it'd be really nice if I could move it over to my magic investment, because I think at this point, I don't know how much more strength I'm going to end up using the rest of that game. So, but I am getting towards the end of it, so I think I'm almost there. I think there's maybe an act or two left, but I mean, that's still probably going to be, 5 or more hours probably. So I think people said it's like a 20-hour game, but I think I've been spending way more of the time than that. So I don't know, maybe I'm just like bad and made a bad character, and so it's just taking forever. But it feels like the game is just going at a very sluggish pace for me. Maybe I picked a bad class for it too. But when I beat the game, I'm going to switch to another class and just check them out for a little bit, hopefully on a harder difficulty. I'm just kind of curious if there's another class that would be funner to play. That's kind of the problem with the game like that, where you can't switch classes. It's like once you selected your class, you're kind of stuck with it. And, if you want to start the game over, sure, but, you're starting the game over. So that's just how that is. But, being a local wireless only multiplayer game, I don't think most people in the US are going to have many opportunities to kind of play that game as it was intended, with a group of individuals kind of thing. I think like if you used Parsec and like set up 4 DS simulators that talk to each other on one PC, you could probably play it online that way. But I think that would require a pretty hefty connection to have 3 people using Parsec to connect into one PC and basically, play on 4 different DS emulators, basically. So yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of what I played. I think I'm gonna maybe try to play something else this week. I need to play some more Chocobo Racing still. I might try to wrap that up. But Chocobo Racing is just playing through the game kind of over and over and over again, for better or for worse. So I don't know how excited I am to do that. I do feel like I am in the need of a video game to play that I feel good about playing, though. So I might try to find something that I'm like, oh, yes, this feels good. I did play some Apex Legends. It's just so easy to put Apex Legends in and just like shoot gun, feel good kind of thing. So maybe I'll play more Apex Legends as well. It was kind of my post Babylon, oh my god, I need a break game, which I think that's been kind of what Apex has been for me. But I just don't like returning to that game super a ton, because like it does feel kind of just the same. And while it's good, it feels good to click the button and shoot the gun. But I don't necessarily know if that is like, I feel like I could be finding another game where I click the button to shoot gun and get more out of it kind of thing. So, but I think with those cases, you kind of just want a game you don't think about, right? And the nice thing about Apex is I do not think about it, but then it feels like a waste of time. So yeah. It's Jillian's question time. Welcome to Jillian's Corner. It's called Jillian's Corner, not Jillian's question. I wrote it down as Jillian's question for some reason. Who can say why? Secret Ben knowledge of why it's called that. I just wrote it that way. This one I don't think I have like too much of a response to, which is just, if you could erase your memory and re-experience a game all over again for the first time, what would you pick? This is an interesting question from like, I think, oh man, I could be wrong, but I feel like for most people, it's more or less a question of like really re-experiencing a joy, right? The first time you played this game, felt the joy that you felt in a lot of ways, right? And I think for me, with a lot of games, I don't, like when I see this question presented, that's what I usually say. I'm not saying Jillian's presenting as that, but that's when I see this question presented, that's what I usually see. And I feel like that experience is a part of me already. So like erasing it, I feel like does not really do much. And I am somebody who continues to search for those experiences, right? So I don't necessarily think I miss that in the same way I think some people do. And I think a lot of that comes down to like when you really focus on specific sets of games, right? And being like, I really wish I could experience playing Ocarina of Time for the very first time again or something like that, right? For me, I think the value of this would be like, what game could I reapproach with a completely new set of values in some ways, right? And I think the game that I would have to say, and let's assume that I am playing this game no matter what, I will play through it and I have no choice. I would love to erase my brain of Final Fantasy XI and play that. I am immensely curious. Or Phantasy Star Online is another great example. Immensely curious. Maybe Shenmue's a great one as well. It's like these games that like, I have no idea how someone today receives these video games. I cannot fathom what Final Fantasy XI looks like today to somebody new. What does this look like? Because when I play Final Fantasy XI, there are years and years and years of baggage with that, right? And I need to overcome that baggage to get to answers. But if you come in fresh, you can get to those answers easier as a new player, I think, of like what the game is today in the modern day, versus someone like me who has this idea of what Final Fantasy XI is for the 6 years I played it. And then there's been 10 to 15 years worth of development since then, right? So I think that, and then also Phantasy Star Online, I think is a very similar feeling of like, what is the appeal of Phantasy Star Online if you never played that game originally? Like, I understand the appeal of Phantasy Star Online from a early 2000s internet perspective, but I do not know the appeal of Phantasy Star Online today. There are things I think are valuable in Phantasy Star Online, don't get me wrong. And there are things that I appreciate in Phantasy Star Online. But I don't know if today you would play that game and be like, this is a classic video game. This is a video game that matters. Like, I think it's a historical context more than anything else. I say this all the time, and I've had some people that try to kind of like dissuade my feelings about it, and I definitely like am open to hearing those things. But I feel like I've just never found an answer that has satisfied me about Phantasy Star Online specifically. Shenmue is a little different. I think there are people who've played Shenmue that's new. And I think Shenmue has enough values of today's games that it probably is a little bit more acceptable. You know, maybe not the most ideal video game for most people, but I think it's more acceptable. So yeah, Final Fantasy XI, number 1, Phantasy Star Online. Number 2, mostly because I just want to know what the heck people think about those games if they come in fresh. Because heck if I know what to do. So that's one thing I always wanted to do was like go and interview a bunch of people about Final Fantasy XI, and I just never really got around to it. Final Fantasy XI, every day, I think about what I want to do with Final Fantasy XI, how I want to cover Final Fantasy XI. There are so many things I've left on the table with Final Fantasy XI. I think there's great things to talk about with Final Fantasy XI. I think there's a big gap in how people talk about Final Fantasy XI. But I'm not the person to fill that role. I think that's just the answer. Like, I just do not think I have the grounded, the time, because Final Fantasy XI is a 20-year-old video game that is getting 20 years of content updates, right? And it's just too much video game. But it needs a commitment. It needs someone that understands that game today. And I am not that person. I want to be that person. I desperately want to be that person. But I just look at it and say, there's just no way. There's no way. I would need to stop almost everything I'm doing right now, probably. Or I need to find out a way to make it so my position, in terms of my experience with Final Fantasy XI, can drive that conversation. And that's a challenge, figuring that out. And I think driving that conversation is a very hard thing to do if you have the knowledge gap that I have, despite this feeling internally that I know Final Fantasy XI, because I don't know Final Fantasy XI. It was 6 years of my life, right? I feel like I know Final Fantasy XI, but I absolutely do not know Final Fantasy XI today. So I think there's a lot of internal drama with me with Final Fantasy XI, as it may appear to you after you heard me talk about that. Anyways, thank you, Jillian, for your question. I appreciate that. Final Fantasy XI still on the docket of maybe eventually I'll talk about it again. I still have that, the missing underwear of Final Fantasy XI video I could do if I really wanted to. Get some nice clickbait, put a big Mithra booty on that thumbnail. But I'm just not making those videos anymore, so it's a little weird for me to do that now. But, back in the day, I think it would make more sense for me to do something like that. But I think maybe not today. That's an interesting story, though. There's a great story to be told about the missing underwear of Final Fantasy XI. News. Let's get into the news. Sorry, my brain's starting to shut down at the end of this podcast. This feels like a weird episode this week. IntiCreates was at I don't know what show it was actually. I think it was either a Chinese show or a Taiwan show. Not sure for sure. It was the stuff was in Chinese. GNNgamer.com reported this, and it is the Just Dance Game Festival. Let me see if I can figure out what the Just Dance Game Festival is while I'm typing here real quick. But anyways, IntiCreates is there. They had something they were saying about Grim Guardians, but one of the things that Neo was at Songshan Cultural and Creative Park in Taiwan. Okay, Taiwan event. That's what I thought. Anyways, so they had some kind of thing they were talking about there. And they had Grim Guardians. I think they were showing that off. Looks like PS5 and Switch maybe come into that region at the very least. There's a PS4 trademark logo on there as well, if it's not already there. Anyways, but one thing that they showed off was a Gunvolt rhythm game looking thing. So this is interesting. I saw some speculation that this might be super early. But this is basically a Gunvolt rhythm game. If you don't know, Gunvolt, the series that has the 2D Mega Man style series that people call it, I guess. I don't know what people call Gunvolt these days. There's a while I was like, it was the Mega Man successor, and I'm like, I don't know about that. Gunvolt does not feel Mega Man-y to me in a lot of ways. It does structurally, I guess, maybe, but anyways, so it's a series that has this like idol as kind of one of the main characters, and there have been other idols introduced since then. Lots of music has come with the game with vocals and things like that. So music is an important part of Gunvolt, even though actually I kind of am not a huge fan of Gunvolt's soundtrack, honestly. I think it's fine. But IntiCreates as a company, I think is a company that really cares about their properties overall. I just think they have ownership over them, and I think they really value them. They're excited for them, right? It feels very like Hunex in the 1950s, 1990s, late 90s with like, you know, what they're doing with Private Idol and Blue Breaker and stuff like that. Where it just feels like this immense passion for these franchises they have, right? That's why they're making a Galgun Castlevania game, right? Anyways, but so they have this rhythm game that they showed off at that event, and as far as I can tell from what people were posting, it's reusing assets from like a event that they had with like 3D models of the main idol singing or whatever, but there's kind of like these bars on the side. Very little details, I think, about this game, and I couldn't find that much outside of this tweet that came out from, who's this? Is this a guy? RF Flame 080105. I'll link that tweet there. Anyways, but yeah, it's a Gunvolt rhythm game. That's really all we have to say at this point. I think what I'm most interested in is, you know, does it stick to only Gunvolt and all the vocal tracks from that, or does it branch out to some of their other games like Dragon Marked for Death, like Grim Guardians, for me, or the Curse of the Moon series, something like that. Bloodstain might have to get some, you know, licensing stuff for that. But also, if you're a real IntiCreates fan, Kaito Joker on the 3DS. I actually like that soundtrack. It does sound very Gunvolt-y, but maybe I have a little bit more of affection for that soundtrack, I feel like. And so I'll be curious to see, like, you know, what they actually include in there kind of thing. But it sounds like it's super early on and that they're not even really officially announcing it yet, but they did have it on show at that event as just like a, hey, look at this thing. And who knows, maybe it's not an actual product they're planning to sell at this point, just like a thing that they threw together as like a test thing. So that's cute and that's cool. We talked about Buddy Mission Bond fan games about 2 weeks ago. I played a short demo that a person made. And I didn't, there's like a Christmas one as well. I have not played that yet. I think I might need to, because I think they said the Christmas event happens before this thing. But the first mission for the Buddy Mission fan game is out fully. I think they said it was about an hour long to play. So I have not played it yet. So I took this as an opportunity to basically try to get visual novel OCR set up. Which, if you don't know, is like a, you know what I do with the camera, where I point the camera at the screen to translate stuff. You can use visual novel OCR to basically do that directly on your screen by basically taking anything you have displayed on your screen and having that captured, and it will recognize the characters and translate it. For some reason, I have tried this many times in the past, cannot get this to work. It works, people use it, so I just need to sit down and figure out what the problem is. So, you know, at some point I want to do that. And this is a good chance for me to go ahead and finally figure that out, because it is a hour-long text-heavy thing. So I think it's probably worth me. There's another visual novel I'm looking at right now I'd also like to maybe take a look at using the OCR. And like when I'm playing games, you know, for some people, they're going to have to use the camera, right? But for myself, I have a capture card set up and everything like that. So having the OCR set up where I can read the text and stuff will be helpful as well if I can get that. So there's a lot of reasons why I really have been needing to set it up for a long time. But like for some reason, it's like either I can't get it to look at the screen, or it'll look at the screen and it won't take the characters, or it'll take the characters but it won't translate them. I don't know what the problem is. Every time I try it, something's wrong and I cannot figure it out. So anyways, either way, that Family Game's up, it is out, and you can play it. The mission 1 includes all 4 characters. I believe, based off the description, my understanding is that like it is like an amnesia room or something. So I think it's kind of like takes place outside of the lore of Buddy Mission Bond, which, you know, for a fan game makes a lot of sense to do something like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking that out once I can get Visual Novel OCR working, because I tried it again and could not get it working. So if you have any tips, tricks, or whatever recommended things, let me know, because I have tried this multiple times and like for some reason I'm just stupid and cannot do it. And the last news story here is we got Harvest Moon Winds of Anthos was announced. I don't think they said what platforms it was for, but if you don't know, Harvest Moon is the spin-off fork series from Story of Seasons. Story of Seasons was originally Harvest Moon. That was the US name. And then the companies had a breakup, and so Harvest Moon is now its own franchise, the one who owns the Harvest Moon name in the US. And then Story of Seasons, the developer makes those original Harvest Moon games. Those are now Story of Seasons here in the US as well. So Harvest Moon Wind of Anthos is from the little fork-off company that's like a new development team, or quote new. They've been doing this for a long time. And Winds of Anthos in particular just has a nice look to it. It's just like a very clean looking game. It's also kind of behind the back in a more traditional, like, you know, third person adventure game kind of look, in a way that I think is like really appealing. And I think really helps sets it apart from Story of Seasons, kind of like isometric approach kind of thing. The world definitely seems fairly big. Don't really know how big it is, how populated it is. But it looks really good. So that was all I really had to say, was that like, hey, I think it looks really good. First time I looked at one of these Harvest Moon games and was like, hey, it looks really good. There was like a weird Minecraft one at one point on the 3DS that I think also looked pretty good too, but I heard it was kind of a weird mess of a video game. But honestly, that's like more appealing to me than just playing another Story of Seasons game kind of thing. So I have not played one of those games in forever, though. I think I have Magical Melody on the GameCube, right? Yeah, that one I haven't played through still. I bought it for like $10 in a new bin at like a Best Buy. It's like a clearance bin or something. So I've only ever played through A Wonderful Life on GameCube as well. So, but I never liked the look of Harvest Moon or Magical Melody. I think the 2D assets look good, but when you put it in 3D in the game, it just looks like kind of weird, like, you know, baby doll things that like, I don't know. They look weird. They got big butts. They got big heads. Everything about them looks weird to me. But hey, I don't know. It's been a long time since I looked at that game. Maybe if I looked at it now, I wouldn't be so weirded out by it as I was back then. So anyways, that's it for this week. Thanks for coming. OneControlPort.com is the website. Like I said, Babylon's Fall video is out, so if you have not gone and watched that, go check that out. That is a premiere video, so it is on the main One Controller Port channel, so please go watch it if you can. If you need to do it on weekend, feel free to do it on the weekend. If you can share it, I would really appreciate it. It is definitely kind of at the point where I don't think it's going to get a lot of big traction going forward, so any additional places that can see it, that might be helpful. There's also the PCFX Fan Club podcast coming out later today, so go check that out. Again, if you're listening to this the day after it goes up, which is a Monday, then it is already up, so go check that out on that podcast feed, things like that. Otherwise, yeah, I'm going to start planning some stuff here soon, and I'll try to give you guys some updates on what's coming and when. I do have a OCP Plus video that I have recorded but have not done yet, like edited the video for yet, so that might happen. That's actually kind of an interesting video. It's not really a review. And then I do have like a review of Chocobo Final Fantasy Chocobo Fables. Final Fantasy Fables Chocobo Tales review. That was that game we streamed. I did a review for it, and that's going up on the early access here soon, probably at the end of the month, and then Dan Dan Stompland will come out of early access then as well. So anyways, and the Ko-fi post going up on Tuesday if you want to go read that. So check that out if you want to get some insight into my brain thoughts after Babylon's Fall is done. Anyways, though, that's it for this week. Thank you again for coming, and I hope you guys have a great week. Bye!